We are in a time right now where I think we all need to really tap into this inner knowing. Hey, it's me, it's Rachel, coming at you from my outside cottage. And I want to talk to you about intuition and the ways that I actually started to trust my intuition. I have always been intuitive. I've always had a sense of knowing intuition. You probably have as well. So for me, when I started to really trust my intuition, which is something that we all have, and it's something I have always had, and it's always felt very strong, but I had pushed it down for years. But when I started to trust this intuition, and when it didn't make sense to other people, and sometimes it didn't make sense to me, when I started to trust it, it brought about this sense of liberation, this sense of freedom in my life. And it's a gradual process, and it was for me, because this is not gonna happen overnight, but I'm gonna give you some really kind of fun tips on how I started to use and trust my intuition. And when you do that, you're gonna feel like something that has been kind of pushed down or hidden it's gonna feel like it's gonna be unlocked. For me, when I really went all in and started to trust my intuition, I saw the world in a completely different light. And it feels amazing. It feels very expansive. And I really want to touch on this energy. For me, I had to just get really basic. Does it feel, there's two types of energy that I like to acknowledge. One is this expansive energy. It feels really light and happy and expansive. That's just the way I look at it. It's just this light feeling in your body. And on the other hand, and this is also important, there's a constrictive energy. Something feels like a little bit heavy or really heavy, or it feels tight, almost like you've put on I like to use the analogy of you've put on this tight sweater that doesn't actually fit. It feels uncomfortable, and you really can't find the words sometimes. And just because you can't find the words doesn't mean it's not real. Once you start tapping into the intuition, you're actually going to start seeing a lot of things start to line up. So the first thing I would like to talk about is a tip that really worked for me: acknowledging coincidences when they show up. And I will tell you, believe it or not, coincidences happen throughout the day. We just don't acknowledge them. We don't even notice. So really just having an awareness of something that is lining up. And a lot of times it happens when we have this expansive energy, when we just notice what is happening. And I'll give you a few examples, and maybe this will resonate with you. So yesterday I had the television on, and I think it was a podcast, so I kind of had it on in the background. But I also was getting ready to pick up a book, or maybe it was my notes. And I read the first line of these notes, I believe it was. And that same line, there was like two words. The person on the podcast said the two words as at the same time I was reading this. And I just acknowledged that. I'm not making it mean anything, but I started noticing these little things happen. And it happened again later on in the day. And this was like actually starting to be really fun for me. Which also, what a coincidence that I was getting ready to film this video. Another example is, and I've talked about this before, and this happens to me, I will wake up with a random song in my head, and it could be like a commercial or a jingle from when I was a kid, or a song from like the 70s that maybe my mom and dad would play in the car. And it's kind of like this over and over, and it's almost like a message. And many, many times when this happens, I've got this song in my head. And so I'd turn on the music, whatever I'm listening to, some kind of platform, and that song pops in. Or I'm at the grocery store and that song is playing. And then that song usually goes out of my head. But again, acknowledging these fun coincidences, you can treat it like a game, and it gives you that expansive energy when you're doing it. So any coincidence that occurs in your life, I want you to take note of that. And for me, because I forget, so I will write it down. So another example, if you're thinking about someone and they call or text you or they message you randomly, take note of that. That is acknowledging, like, oh, I was just thinking about this person. Isn't that neat that they decided to call me or they decided to send me a message? I started taking this a step further. It was almost like a snowball effect, where the more I noticed and acknowledged, the more these coincidences showed up. Someone is on my mind a couple of times a week. It's a different person. It's usually a person that I've had contact with over the years, an old friend, an old coworker, family member that I haven't reached out to. And if they're on my mind, and I would challenge you to do this. This is a lovely energy experiment, by the way. Just send them a message like, hey, you've been on my mind. I just wanted to reach out and just say hello. I hope you're doing well. And I just leave it at that. I will say most of the time, 80% of the time, I get a message back. It doesn't happen all the time, but I'll get a message back like, oh, thanks for thinking of me. I'm really going through something right now. Or I've been going through a tough time. Hey, do you want to go have lunch? So really taking it a step further makes this ramp up even more. And you're going to see, I'm just smiling because you're going to see things really start to show up in your life. So, quick question. How do these coincidences show up for you? Because we all have different ways, I think, that they show up. All right, so the next way I like to practice playing around with my intuition is when these things happen, I have a journal. I know, I'm always going to talk about writing things down, but writing it down helps expand your energy. So you're essentially, when you're writing things down after just noticing, I mean, I've got some journals here. I'm typing them in the notes on my phone. That's usually the handiest thing I have because I don't always have a notebook and pen. And then I have a voice notes. If I'm walking outside, I have a transcriber that I just talk into. I'm like, okay, this happened. I remember this dream last night. So that's kind of fun. So writing down your coincidences or these intuitive hits does a couple of different things. So what it does is you're essentially creating a tangible record of these intuitive moments that you can refer back to months later. And I'm going to tell you, please do this because I've been known to oh yeah, I'll remember that. And then 6 months later, or even longer, this thing that had been on my mind that I didn't write down showed up, but I didn't have a record. I'm like, you know what? I feel like that's, I had this intuitive knowing, but I didn't write it down. I didn't tell anybody. It's one of those things I'll remember that. You won't. Okay. So I really want to encourage you, even if it's just a couple of sentences or one sentence, just as a little reminder. It's almost like, I think about these, writing it down. They're just little breadcrumb notes for yourself. So you can refer back to this because these moments come and go very quickly. It's almost like just all of a sudden this thing happens and you're like, oh yeah. Oh wow. I was just thinking about that. Don't say you're going to remember it. Just type it out real quick or leave yourself a voice note. Come back to it later. And it helps validate these experiences that you are having by providing more of a concrete reference point, if you will, to the frequency and the accuracy of your intuition. Because when we don't write it down, we start to dismiss it. We start to put it to the side maybe I was just making that up. Write it down and have a record, because I think that actually helps build your confidence when you are trying to open up your intuition. So it's easy to dismiss this one-off occurrence now and again. as just a plain coincidence. But when you see a pattern emerge over time, these coincidences start to link together. Okay, are you following me? It gives us this confidence like, yeah, there is more at play here. Also, writing down these occurrences and by paying attention to these intuitive nudges, by acknowledging them on paper or digitally or however you want to just record it somehow, you're actually training yourself to be very receptive and very open to this guidance that really it's like your higher self wanting to guide you. But when we don't keep a record of this, we easily dismiss these things and we don't connect the dots. We don't link these things up. So when you do this acknowledging and writing it down, you're actually enhancing your intuitive abilities. And then the third way to start to really tap into your intuition, and this is more of like a cautionary tale. Be very mindful when you have an intuitive hit, I guess we'll call it. Be mindful of who you tell. I'm guilty of being really excited about like, oh, this thing happened and then it happened again and then this kind of started to add up because I've told the wrong people. I've told the people who are not interested in intuition, who don't think it's a lot of fun, who are not curious. We are in a time right now where I think we all need to really tap into this inner knowing. Your gut instincts may or may not resonate with other people. Your gut instinct may not make sense to people. Maybe they're not ready to hear it. If someone tells you that your intuition is wrong, do not fall for it. Do not listen. I would jot that down, make a note of like, listen, if you're excited about it, that's great. But not everyone gets access to your intuition, okay? Because some people will bring it down. And now I'm going to come back around to this expansive energy versus constricted energy. I have told the wrong people about my intuitive, like this thing that would not leave me alone kind of thing. And I told the wrong people and they either rolled their eyes, sad, got really uncomfortable, or they tried to persuade me that it was kind of like crazy making. Their path is different, I will say. And everyone has their own unique experience and perspective. You say you got an intuitive hit and then you told somebody and you told the wrong person. That's okay. I have lived through it because sometimes our gut instincts may not make sense to other people, or maybe they're not ready to hear it. Because sometimes things that come to me are a little bit like jarring, but not in a bad way, but it's definitely the unexpected. So ask yourself, when you're talking to someone and you're telling them because you don't feel like writing it down, I thought that was my way of acknowledging just telling somebody, because I'm like, everybody needs to know. They don't. They're not interested, okay? Now, there's that closed off energy that feels heavy. It makes you feel, for me, I felt like really embarrassed or almost ashamed to even share this kind of weird thing that happened. But for me, before I told this person, it felt like a lot of fun. Like, this is like the coolest thing that happened. And then this other thing that happened, and now they link up together. Not sure what it means, but I'm going to write it down. And I told somebody, and it was a huge, huge mistake. And so I'm just a cautionary tale of like who you tell it to. You can tell me in the comments, tell me anything like these coincidences. This is a place for you to share these weird, maybe intuitive coincidences that have happened to you. And for me, it's validation. For me, it's expansive. It's fun. For me, it's right up there with play. So surrounding yourself also with positive, supportive people who get it, who are interested in what you're doing, who are also intuitive and want to expand their intuitive abilities can help you develop your intuition. And it's that person that's like, nope, that doesn't seem weird at all. And to the other people out there, it probably seems like the craziest thing, right? So also, I mean, this is a sign to protect your energy. These negative influences that brings you down, makes you feel closed off, can really cloud your judgment, meaning doubting your intuition. And when you doubt your intuition, you're closing the door. It impairs our ability to trust and listen. So choose very wisely who you, surround yourself with and who you share this information with. I have a group of people in like a Reiki and meditation circle that I completely trust. And even if it doesn't make sense to them, they've got my back. They're on my front row when it comes to developing and really listening to this intuition that I have, honestly, guys, I have pushed it down for so long. I am not doing this anymore. So just a quick recap. I want you to acknowledge any, even if it seems like the smallest coincidence, just acknowledge it, write it down, or have some kind of record of it. Be mindful of who you tell. So if you have more specific questions on intuition, being an empath, highly sensitive person, or just some tips and tools, let me know in the comments. Okay, everybody, just a reminder, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Bye.